And welcome back to Weatherford Daze. This is Jason, my wife Rachel. We're glad that you are joining us here this day. It's daytime for you, but
Today.
today, yes, thank you. We've had some really interesting conversations lately. This one hopefully is a little bit of a different pace, something that Rachel was thinking and has thought about for many months. uh, was about a book series that they called the Little House on the Prairie series, Laura Ingalls Wilder. Then we started thinking, okay, getting out on the frontier, homesteading, living off the land, getting away from civilization. And then here we do an episode about post-apocalypse survival. And it was like, okay, what's the lighter side of that? The one where you choose to do it and not have it forced upon you. Well, there's plenty of other movies, book series, and things like that where in real life where people decide to do that. What kind of spirit and what kind of mindset lets you do that or pulls you toward that? Maybe you're interested in it.
Just going back to the basic, right?
Yeah. So I know that we did Laura Ingalls Wilder's series, Swiss Family Robinson. They
Mhm.
you can kind of lay the ground for that. I always thought that they shipwrecked and they were making the best of a situation, but that's maybe I'm thinking more the movie than the book, which you said
They
some things
were
to.
shipwrecked,
Well, of course, but
but
you said that they were wanting to
they
homestead when
they
they got
were
to
on
their
their way.
destination.
Yeah,
Sorry,
they were on their way to the new land. They were
the New World.
the new world.
Oh,
New world.
our neck of the woods. Yeah.
They were pioneers. They were going off to start over a brand new life,
Hmm.
and they were prepared for what that was going to look like. Did they kind of get waylaid on the way and, sidetracked from their original destination? Yes, they did. Yeah, it was not the way that they had intended to do that.
Right.
They had planned on being with other people, which for a long time, it was only their family that was left. All of the captain and all of the sailors and everyone else, they were gone. They don't know really. And the assumption is that they died, I think, or had taken off somehow. I don't know. There were other like boats, but they were left the only ones left on the ship with an island in sight of where the ship was on a rock and was broken and kind of had been saved from going down by the rock, which I've always loved the symbolism of that. They had their faith in God, the rock. It's a very much a Christian book. And the first thing that they did was to thank God for their lives and for the fact that there was land and that, they had things that they could then take from the shipwreck to the shore. And over the course of the next several weeks, they were able to go back and get all of the stuff from the ship, which was something that started their life off there all by themselves on a uninhabited island. They were a lot better off than if they had been completely shipwrecked with nothing. So, but yeah,
They had some bare bones resources to start off.
Mhm.
I always remembered about specifically Swiss Family Robinson is that they built this kind of almost like a jungle treehouse kind of home, and they had ways of getting like did they have like an aqueduct that they built to get fresh water from one location to the other, and and they had they used their smarts and their ingenuity. What kind of was he a reverend?
No.
What was his I'm sorry, I'm thinking somebody else. What was his occupation back in his home country before they of course he's
I
from
am not
Switzerland,
really
I thought.
sure. They were a Swiss family. Now, as far
Yeah.
as we know, they were not ever given like a last name. I know the title of the book is The Swiss Family Robinson, so you kind of assume that they are the Robinson family.
Right, but they just give first
But
names and leave it at that.
yeah, and it actually, I don't know that the dad is ever named in the book.
He's just called father.
I don't know. Yeah. And no, the mom is named, and the father might be named, but I don't remember it. I remember the names of the four boys,
Right.
which didn't in the Disney movie, didn't they get rid of one of the boys? If I'm remembering
There was
right, they
another
only
character they
have
thought was a
three
boy, and
boys.
it was really a girl
Right, that's later
she.
on.
Okay, I thought
But
she
there are
was
actually there's
shipwrecked
four
too.
boys. There's Franz, Ernest,
Yes.
Jack, and no, Fritz is the oldest. Franz is the youngest. So there's four of them.
I
I
remember
don't
the
think they
actors
have
who played him.
Jack in the movie adaptation, which
Oh,
is
okay. So
bizarre that they
they shrunk
completely
it.
get rid of. Yeah, they completely get rid of a child. I never
Yeah.
understood that
I
choice,
don't know.
but
They're trying to keep the cast high, but
unless I'm just completely crazy, I might be crazy.
you
I
know,
should probably look up stuff before we sit down and record, but
we
it's
are
fun. We just wing it.
welcome to what do they call it when those writers that come up with the plot by the seat of their pants are called pantsers, right?
Panzer. That
That
sounds
is okay. You didn't know that
so. No,
writers.
I'm.
There's a certain kind of plot. There's plotters and planners that outline everything in a
Mm,
story, and there's pantsing, which is basically you're
fly by the
just
seat of your
fly to see
pants.
your pants.
Mm.
I did not know that until I guess YouTube algorithm knows I like how people write stories. Anyway, what I was trying to find out is what background for the father do you
Oh,
hear how he's so
I
good at
forgot you asked that.
building these gadgets and nifty cool things. I
I
was like, he's got to be like a physicist or I
I
don't know.
think that he is possibly like he studies something or is a teacher or a biologist or
Maybe
some.
a university person for
Yeah,
whatever
I mean,
reason.
you know that he knows a lot about the natural world. And
Could be a polymath.
he knows
Yeah.
things. Do I know what he did before? No.
Okay.
Do I know what he was planning to do when he got to his destination? No. But do I know that he was extraordinarily well, like
Versed in things.
yes,
He
he
had
knew
knowledge.
about plants, he knew a lot about animals, he knew a lot about how things were made up and like how to actually make things from scratch, like candles and
That is more of a modern conceit out of books. We go, well, we have to know, we have to believe that he knows these things. But back in the day, when people wrote these things, they just went, you know
mhm.
what? He knows these things. Moving on, get over it. And you just kind of go, okay, and you go, okay. But nowadays we're like, no, we have to know where he's from and what
Yeah.
he used to be a botanist or
I
something.
think a lot of people actually get frustrated at the lack of what they consider to be world building
Okay.
ideas in this. And even the
That's
fact that
actually
we don't
refreshing.
know
I don't,
exactly
yeah,
where this island was. We don't know
not important.
because the variety of plants and animal life that were on there, it doesn't fit anywhere in our known world. So it's kind of like you are almost on a fantasy
Yeah,
land where
you
you've
might think
got
it would be
penguins and kangaroos and these animals that shouldn't necessarily exist
I'm
together
thinking
and
that
yet they
that's more
do.
Australia. That's somewhere that's more the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic. See that they're just going maybe
It's
no,
supposed to
yeah.
be a fantasy in a lot of ways.
And
It's
not
something
everybody
where
had Google Earth where they and all this
and
knowledge and
I think
they just go with the adventure and you like it and
I think the intention of the author was to just tell a children's story where you learned about how this family, when they were put into this circumstance, when they had the mindset that they did, which was to go off and to start over in a new land, and the adventure and the hard work and the faith in God that sustained them as a family unit.
you want to see them survive and how did they do
Right.
it? That's the core of this.
You see
Yeah.
the step by step of how they actually get on. And that is what makes the story interesting. It's not that they necessarily face any horrific edge of your seat
I thought they
circumstances.
were pirates. Was that the
That's the movie.
oh, wow, wow. So did Disney was
But
thinking, yeah, we got to spice
yeah,
this up.
no, I
Pirates.
mean,
Was
they
it
make
that
things a
deadly?
lot more scary
Yeah.
in the movie than they were in the book. Whereas in the book, it was just simply them against the elements. and taking things one step at a time. But at the same time, they had everything that they really needed in order to survive.
And they weren't waiting. You mentioned this earlier today. They weren't waiting for rescue. Like as soon as a boat came by, they'd be like, "Oh, rescue us!" And then they leave their house, their hut behind. You said that they decided to
They
stay.
did decide to stay. And I mean, I think that at first they were just trying to survive, but then they made a life for themselves. And
They thrived.
you mentioned the treehouse that they made.
Yes,
But the
that was
thing
very memorable. At
is
least
they
that was the Disney
start
thing. Yeah.
off with a more temporary shelter on the beach. Then they move to the treehouse. Then they actually move to a cave.
Oh, I
And
do remember a cave
yeah.
somewhere in the story, even in the Disney one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So they create different houses. They name the different areas that they have so that they can get from one place to another. They end up with pets. They end up with, at all of the things
I
as
remember the
they're
little
going
boys
along and
riding an
discovering.
ostrich. I remember that they were always
Mhm.
riding an ostrich around, and that's from Africa. So they're just
Yeah.
the author's just like, oh, we're just going to put everything here. So
It was meant to be a children's fantasy story with the emphasis on how to survive, and that's step by step. It wasn't meant to actually be historically accurate.
and it was an escapism too, because
Right.
I'm sure the children on islands may have read it, but I'm saying it was mainly written for probably people in civilization, and so that pioneering discovery,
Mhm.
exploration, survive. We can make it with spirit.
But I don't
That's
think
what.
you need all of the accuracy
Right.
necessarily to enjoy the story any more than you do accuracy in Neverland to enjoy Peter Pan.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
but
not quite a Rachel quote, but it's a Rachelism, but it borders on that. But I'll take it.
okay.
So that's one, and that has more of a fantastical feel to it. I always thought that the House on the Prairie and Laura Ingalls, and I grew up watching the TV show.
Mhm.
I have a couple episodes really stuck in my mind still to this day for different reasons. But I thought that one, she was writing from her
Mhm.
experiences, was she not?
Yeah.
So actually, the books are way, of course, way more realistic than
Mhm.
you'd probably hear anywhere else. And of course, it's her observations, so they're her perceptions about things and about how Native Americans. So it's not really a reflection of how their culture really was. Her how she saw it. So it
Right.
could be based on
I mean,
her opinions.
she basically fictionalized her autobiography,
Right.
which is
Just you
just
just juiced it just a little bit.
I think that's genius. I wish more people did. I really do. I feel
I think there
like
are a lot more than we realize, and I now want to go look up, see which ones have done that.
probably so, but that's the only one I can think of that was done that way. Of course, I have a long history with both of these books, with the Little House books and the Swiss Family Robinson. Little House was the first book series that I remember ever reading. So I was around 4 or 5 reading these.
This is little Rachel time. This is
Hmm.
way back in the day.
Yeah, so
Not too far back in the day.
and honestly, I can remember after reading the Little House books at like 5 years old, deciding that I wanted to start writing books. And then the next series that I remember reading after that was Raggedy Ann and Andy. Those were also some of the very first books that I ever read. Of course, it's funny because Raggedy Ann is on a much lower reading level than the Little House books, but oh well. But then Swiss Family Robinson is one that I discovered probably around 7 or 8. So that was another one from very early on. And that one deeply impacted me too. Just my ideas about life and what I wanted life to be like. So for me, these are very personal. If you asked me as a child what I wanted to do with my life, I would have been one of the ones that said, I want to go somewhere on an adventure, somewhere where nobody else is, and figure out how to live. And it was because of those books that was my mentality, that I wanted to learn how to farm, and I wanted to raise the chickens and the cows and the pigs, and that was my dream for my life, and it has not turned out that way, and that's okay.
It has been an adventure of sorts, but I wouldn't quite put it on the level of homesteading.
But I think that that's something that, as we were thinking about this topic, and even how near and dear it is to my heart, as a homeschooler that wanted to do that and never really had the chance to full on homestead, just looking at where that mentality has come to today and how many more people are choosing that kind of lifestyle. And I feel like even today, those books are very inspiring of that kind of mindset. And especially since 2020, when homeschooling took off and more and more people went, you know what? I kind of like that we disconnected a little bit. We're going to do this a little
I
bit
think they
more. Let's
found
go
out. I think
back
they found
to
out that we homeschooled, and they just wanted to be like us.
right,
And
right.
actually,
So
strangely,
maybe we're pioneers in that way,
well,
huh?
I actually did have a couple people ask me about homeschooling and how that's done because they know we did it, and I gave them what little that I knew, but I basically said, she's the expert. Um, so what draws me to things like that is we're an independent nation. Okay. Our first declaration was the Declaration of Independence from England. And we said we're going to do things our way. We're going to have a constitutional republic. We're going to all this kind of, and it is kind of based off of similarities to say what you will of this how Rome got started because Rome was a republic. But what I'm trying to say is that the West was largely unexplored, except for the people that cultures that live there, and there was opportunity to be had. Very an untamed wilderness. I like a lot of that appeals to me. I think about movies like Jeremiah Johnson and things like that, where it's just him. He's out in just trying to make a life for himself, and that appeals. That appeals to me. I think that something about my scientific mind gets turned on and I start going, okay, how do we make sure that we don't die from drinking this water? Okay, now we know that we can't eat or drink these kind of things because this is poisonous because look at the color. Those kind of things appeal to me. We can eat this but not that.
Mhm.
How do you survive? And there's other movies that have that survival mentality in it that are not about homesteading that has that same spirit to me. But this is not just about surviving and then thriving.
Mhm.
It's not about, oh, let me go out here to test to see what I can do. Okay, then let me get back to civilization, the creature comforts. It's we're out here to make a life for ourselves. I think that does appeal to me. I don't know if I'm ready to be a farmer, but there's some things that appeal to me. I don't know any other life than one that's dependent upon others that have needs, and then I provide them. So I'm not quite sure, what a life would be like to say, okay, well, our own food we grow,
Mhm.
our own, all our needs are met by us and by nature.
Mhm.
I don't know what that would look like, and so that's why I watch things and read things to see, and I really respect that mentality, but I'm not quite sure. I think I'm a little bit more of a Jacob than an Esau in some ways. And I wish I was more of a, you know,
What does that mean?
because Jacob was a man of the tents. Not that he was a supplanter. That's not me. No, it's that he was more, I think of him as more of a creature comfort guy. Esau was the guy that was the hunter. He was out in nature. I always wanted to
But
have that.
Jacob was still in nature. He was a shepherd.
Well, yeah, but they said that he was more in the tents than he was. They were trying to make a parallel between
Okay.
more outdoorsy type. But
I would
I
have
grew up
thought
around
it.
a lot of
Yeah,
hunters.
Esau was the hunter warrior, and Jacob was more. at home, but he would have been the one
His
that was
hands were smooth.
farming
His
and the
hands were
sheep.
very smooth, though.
That they were smooth in that they weren't hairy. Esau was very hairy
They had people that
because in order
tended the
to
sheep. He
trick the
was.
father, they
They
didn't
had
roughen
money,
his hands.
or they
They
had
put goat hair on the back of his hand
right. I
and
always
his
saw
arm.
Jacob as kind of that type,
Yeah.
but anyway, the parallel
Okay.
is still there. I grew up in a more in the deep south, and there was a lot of hunters and people like that, and people that could go out camping and live like camping. I had no problem with that, at least until later when my, with my issues, my stomach issues. But I like camping. I like that. I like you're building your own fire and you're cooking food over that fire. I like that.
Mhm.
But I think that I'm still a little bit more of a city mouse than I'd like to admit.
And I think that is, we were talking about the parallel, or not the parallel, but the contrast between
Mhm.
the two stories that we're kind of highlighting tonight
Right.
is that with the Ingalls, Laura Ingalls Wilder, her family, they were going, but they were still with people. They stopped by a town with other people with stores. And, there was still that level of, they weren't forsaking everything.
All they had a community that they were connected
They
to.
were going from one place that was kind of rugged and kind of live off the land. There were more people in the east where they started out, and they go west where there's fewer people, but there's more land and more opportunity for them. There was the dream that they were chasing.
You could
And
go to town to get supplies,
right. But
or
it wasn't
get a wife.
necessarily that they were trying to go to a more rugged lifestyle per se. They were just going where there was opportunity. And everything was pretty rugged.
So what was the opportunity that he was looking for? I mean, the push west a lot of times was for
It's for the farmland.
so agricultural, not gold or anything like that. That
No,
was further
no.
west.
I think this was after the major gold rush. So there was
After
a
that had kind of
lot
come and
of,
kind of died down a little bit.
right, there
Yeah.
was a lot of settling that already had happened, but it still was pretty sparsely populated with families. So, him choosing to take his wife and children, there was still that element of, there are people. He's not leaving all society.
Right.
And the Swiss Family Robinson, they hadn't intended to leave all society either. It just kind of happened.
Right.
But at least they had a family. It wasn't the dire straits of, Robinson Crusoe, who's,
Had nothing
completely
except for Friday.
alone and has nothing. Yeah. So it's just this different mentality of what they were choosing, what they were looking forward to. And I think that, the parallel of modern day with that is, you're not seeing somebody going completely off the grid.
Right.
You're just seeing people choosing to make things more simple for their families, to slow things down a little bit, to be more self-sustaining as far as trying to grow all of the food that they eat, or most of the food,
Or
or
livestock.
even you're growing some of the food and then you're trying to locally source some of the stuff. And then you see people that are making a lot of their products themselves, their own soaps and cleaners and that kind of stuff. You're seeing people that are making their own sourdough bread from, they're grinding their own grain in order to do that. Just things to the very most basic that they can get, while not completely withdrawing from society. They're still living in the world. They still have technology. They're not going completely Amish.
Right.
They're slowing things down a little bit. They're enjoying life a little bit more simple. And I I don't know, there's just something so appealing about that. I think that that is the modern day equivalent to the Ingalls family and to the Swiss Family Robinson. Just this idea that, you work hard, you appreciate the small things, you appreciate your family, you're thankful to God for the things that you have. And through hard work and through appreciating that simplicity, you're having just this abundant life. You're not chasing after the bling and the wealth and the technology.
Useless hustle and bustle.
Right.
People rushing around, don't even know where they want to go, the noise,
Hmm.
and honestly, there even back in the 30s and 20s and 40s, there was noise, but there's way more noise now than there ever was. Trying to find a quiet moment
Hmm.
or to get away from the noise pollution, to get away from the air pollution, to get away from the light pollution. I mean, we're raising kids that haven't seen the stars that maybe had been seen before because of all the competing light sources. Go outside and look and go, look, there's the Milky Way. You can actually see it, and I think that those, if the only place you can see that kind of thing is in a planetarium, you're missing out. If you don't know how to make a life for yourself without constantly, of course, we're on the internet somewhat, but we're not as chronically online as some people, and there's a lot of a lot of confusion, a lot of there could be overcrowding and things because cities are not. They're just going to keep going up and up and up. They're going to add more stories in these taller skyscrapers, and I just see these cities choked by smoke, and here in the more agrarian lifestyle, your next neighbor may be a mile over, but if you go and get to know them and give a connection, maybe there's something to that. Maybe there's some bonds that you could help them finish building their barn or whatever. I don't know. Uh, there's this bond that here we are surrounded by people, and I don't know any of their names. And so in those smaller communities where they're kind of more spread out, you often you'd know all your neighbors. There would be more of a community instead of less. And I think that I'm drawn to that as well. The ability to really count on one another and have similar viewpoints, similar things that you're in that you're the reasons why you're doing this. So I like that.
I think, I mean, my encouragement would be that wherever you are in your life and whatever your priorities are, you can take the time to enjoy and be inspired by these kinds of books. I mean, for me, it started really, really young, but there are people that they're classics for a reason. And the books are so much better than the TV series or the movie. Yeah, most always
They're
they
just
are, but
they're gonna get rid of a family member that was your favorite character from the book, and they're just trying to they got rid of one of
but
their
if you're
kids.
sitting here and you're hearing how Laura and Mary and Carrie and that they're what they're doing their day to day and the chores that they have to do and how they the school that they learned and that one of the big things that they looked forward to every year was when they slaughtered the pigs and they got to use the bladder. They blew up the bladder of the pigs as a ball and they played ball with it. Yeah. And then you see other things that are described, like the snow
Okay.
when they made maple syrup and they poured it in the snow to harden it, and just all the different the descriptions of what the life was like back then in the world, and just the everyday simple pleasures of how they lived their lives, and knowing that this really with the Laura Ingalls, this was real, the way that they lived. With the Swiss Family Robinson, it may not, that was more of a fantasy, but a lot of those life skills and the process of the step by step, how do you go through and what are you thankful for and how, what are the priorities when you're starting over that life and just appreciating the simple things that you get with both of those and the hard work that goes into it. Like all of those things are lessons that we can take and implement into our lives on some level, right? We may not move off to a farm and get chickens, but just the cooking with discovering new recipes, more clean ingredients, with even just finding new, simple, have a board game night. All of the simple things that you can do to focus on togetherness and family, I think, are ways to emulate
And
that lifestyle.
you really should just maybe take a lesson from those people that are separating themselves a little bit from society as we know it. And they don't put foreign materials into their bodies that everybody just says you have to have them. I don't know if I agree with that. And I think that if we are thinking deeply about what we put into our bodies, whether it's food or other things, we can we can be healthy.
Okay. I didn't know you were going to do that. You getting crunchy?
Crunchy time.
Crunch
In some
time.
ways, yes. I think in some way, I think I'm coming over to it. I'm getting pulled in little by little. It helps
It's
to be hearing that a
hard
lot.
to know where the balance is on that stuff sometimes because I feel like a lot of the crunchy movement is motivated by fear
Yeah,
rather than that desire just to be more simplistic. And I think there's somewhere that you have to find the balance of that because I don't know that in our day and age that it's possible to be completely free of every chemical and toxin that's out there.
right.
But you surely can try one step at a time
Yes.
and do the research and figure out what actually is harmful and what isn't. And just, yeah, there's a lot of debate around that. That is a
Yeah.
very,
Go figure.
yeah.
Use your brain, use your heart, and talk to God. And wherever God leads, that's important.
And maybe, just maybe, when the next pandemic hits, we'll all have our gardens and
Hmm.
know how to provide for ourselves a little bit more.
And when they tell us to shut down, we're already shut down. We they tell us to separate, we already separated.
I don't know that
No, it's too
separation
much.
was ever something that really needed to happen.
No,
Not to the extent that we took it,
no.
but that's another debated topic. Yay.
Oh, well, I think we let the cat out of the bag a couple episodes ago, but okay.
The cat out of the bag for,
Yeah. Hmm.
okay. Mm.
It all started with the philosophy episode, I think. Uh-huh.
I don't remember what you're talking about.
We'll
Oh
talk.
no.
I'll talk to her about it after. But we're
Okay.
glad you guys are with us, and take your kids out into the country and let them look in the sky when it's dark. I don't know. I don't want to harp on that too much, but let them see what the stars look like outside of a planetarium, where there's just a beauty.
And if your start into the homesteading lifestyle is simply just get a real life plant and see if you can keep it alive,
Yes,
then
and it
that
can't be
is
a
a
cat.
great first step.
And the rule before we leave you today, the rule is it can't be a cactus or a succulent. It has to.
Hey,
Those are easy to not kill.
hey, we don't have to have rules like that.
Okay. Oh, okay. You're being nice. It needs to be something that you have to really work at to keep alive, to challenge yourself.
And some of us, if
This
we
is
are
coming from a
keeping our children alive, we're
child of
doing good though,
child of a
and that's
florist. That's what
okay.
it is. All right.
But yeah, you know, if all it is just adding some green into your space, some living green into your space, then that's a good place to be. And if it ends with you going down the pathway to having your
Growing
own
chickens,
chickens and backyard garden and getting rid
herbs.
of your internet completely, keep some way to keep watching Weatherford Days.
Yeah. Don't. You know what? Go completely off the grid, except keep your YouTube
Right.
subscription thing open and go check us out. That'll be your only grid.
And there's some fabulous channels you can follow watching people who are doing this and sharing their
Homesteading as
lives.
well. Yeah. We had fun tonight.
Thanks.
And thanks. And we'll see you next time.